So in some towns in the UK, 1 in 4 homes is now a holiday let. The short-term let market is truly taking over. But right now, between Labour's new tax proposals and councils cracking down and new licensing and new planning rules, which I'll explain, holiday let owners are now starting to see something that they've never seen before, which is whole towns beginning to shut the door on platforms like Airbnb. Now, could we be seeing the end or the decline of the short-term holiday let market in the UK? Now, whether you love short-term lets, maybe you're an owner yourself or an aspiring owner or just an avid staycationer, or whether you hate them because you've been priced out of your own area, then these new legal changes are about to affect you, and they're about to affect millions of people in the UK. Renters, landlords, homeowners, tourists, hosts are panicking, investors are pulling out of entire regions. But what's actually going on? For anyone new here, I'm Cal. I'm a former lawyer trained in the UK and in the US, whose sole purpose for this channel is to simplify and explain the legal system that you live in. And today I'm going to explain to you why short-term lets are being targeted, what the new rules actually are, who wins, who loses, and whether this is genuinely the beginning of the end for Airbnb in the UK. Some serious questions will be answered here. And the best bit is, as always, I'll do it in just under 10 minutes, so let's get straight into it. All right, so why is this all suddenly happening now? Well, for years now, entire communities have been complaining about the impact of short-term lets, whether that is rising rents, locals being pushed out essentially, empty kind of ghost neighborhoods, hotel businesses under pressure, and of course, antisocial behavior in residential blocks, which is extremely common. Now, as I said, in smaller towns in the UK, 1 in 4 homes is now a holiday let. In Cornwall and parts of Wales, teachers and nurses and key workers are struggling to find anywhere to live within 20 miles of their job because they're being priced out of the rental market. It is getting a little bit crazy. In Edinburgh, the council reported that entire stairwells in flats were being converted into revolving mini hotels. So what you now have is a government and an increasingly angry public saying short-term lets have gone too far, and that pressure has finally turned into law. But what is that law? Well, let me explain very simply. Quick one before we continue though, guys. I'll never ask you at any point to hit my subscribe button, only that you give me a chance to earn it from you with the content that I make for you. So if at the end of this video you feel like you've liked or learned or taken anything of value from it, then feel free to do so. But let's look at the rules. What's actually changing? Number one, mandatory licensing for short-term lets. And it's already happening in many areas across the UK, especially Scotland, Wales, London. Councils are rolling out mandatory licensing schemes for holiday lets. That basically means that you cannot legally operate a short-term let without a license now. And you must meet safety standards, fire doors, evacuation plans, pack testing of appliances, insurance, noise control policies, etc. And if the councils are not satisfied, they can refuse your license entirely if they believe your property harms local housing supply. For example, Edinburgh again rejected dozens of applications because the council said residents were being pushed out or priced out. People who have been running Airbnbs for years suddenly had to stop overnight. And why this matters to landlords is that a license is not guaranteed. Even if your property is perfect and you're a great landlord, the council can still say no at any point simply because your area has too many. And this could be a serious deterrent for any of you who are future short-term let developers or investors in that market. Now, the next new hurdle is planning permission rules, essentially a national planning category purely for holiday lets. So Labour has signalled the introduction of a new planning use class, meaning that if you want to turn your property at any point into a short-term let, you may need planning permission first. Now, this is huge because planning permission is, as many of you may already be familiar with, slow as anything, discretionary. It can be refused, it can be capped, it can be limited to specific zones. Councils, again, can literally just say no at any point. No more holiday lets in this town, or will only allow X amount per year. As this is the biggest legal threat to the Airbnb model we've ever seen in the UK, and again, will have significant effects on property investment in many regions in the UK. Now, on top of that, we're also seeing higher taxes on rental income, aren't we? Because of this new Labour budget, 2025 budget, higher tax on rental income. From 2027, the basic rate of landlord tax rises from 20 to 22%. Higher rate goes up from 40 to 42%, additional rate 45 to 47%, 2 additional tax points on all levels of rental income, and tax reliefs for furnished holiday lets, which there were many before, are being reviewed, meaning that many of the tax advantages that these short-term let landlords may have relied upon will completely disappear. If you didn't know, holiday lets can attract certain reliefs currently on things like council tax, and a lot of these short-term let landlords also rely on capital allowances, business rates exemptions, mortgage interest reliefs. So there are a lot of benefits there. Now, if these go, then again, the model becomes far less profitable for landlords, and investors who will see less profit returns. And whilst I'm on this subject, if anyone watching is interested in that 2025 budget and what it really means in pounds and pence for you, which I hope that you all are, take a look at this video I made a few weeks ago on the hidden impact of those budget changes. Very important information for all of you in just 10-15 minutes. Link is in the description. Go check that out after this one. Finally then, we have a big driving factor behind these new rules, which is of course anti-tourism measures. Now, some councils are introducing caps on the number of days you can let your property out per year, fines as well for unlicensed hosts, mandatory registration schemes, restrictions for flats in shared buildings like shared residential blocks. In London, for example, there's already a 90-day annual limit there, unless you have planning permission, of course. So London Council are already making clear moves in this space. Okay, so all right, now you know the rules. Congratulations for learning something useful. Now we can get to the crux of the issue. What will this issue mean? What will be the hidden impact of this on the actual housing market, the economy, and the industry in general? Very important section. Let's get into it. So let's look at the consequences then. Hidden impact number one, as I said before, a license can be taken away at any time. So even if you're approved, many councils state clearly that they can revoke your license with immediate effect, meaning that one complaint, one fire safety inspection issue, all very common, one neighbour dispute, again, antisocial behaviour stuff, they can shut down your entire business model. A model that may have taken you months or years to set up. So if you're relying on short-term lets for income, or you aspire to rely or invest in that market anytime soon, which is undeniably an attractive prospect considering the rental yields you can make and the tax benefit I've discussed before, then now you absolutely have to have a contingency plan if you're going to do it, if of course you are within one of these councils, because that's important. I don't want to give you absolutes when that's not necessary. Not all councils have or will impose these rules. That's for you to check on your local council. But if so, yes, then you must have a contingency plan if you plan on relying on short-term let income. Now, your second hidden impact will be that your mortgage might not allow holiday lets anymore. Now, most of them don't, I think, depending on the agreement you originally took out, but most of them don't. Many landlords do not realise that Airbnb use is a mortgage breach on most residential loans, or they do realise and they try and find a way around it. Lenders are now scanning Airbnb listings, cross-checking postcodes, and if they catch you, and they can demand full repayment of your mortgage, increase your rate, or block future borrowing, or report you to credit agencies. So what can you learn from this? Well, expect enforcement to increase as those regulations tighten. Now, the third hidden impact of these new rules will be that planning permission will favour locals over investors. We talked about planning permission categories and rules at the start of the video. New rules will create a new planning permission category for short-term lets, and what this will mean is that planning departments will now probably favour locals over investors. They will prioritise local housing needs and first-time buyers and long-term residents with affordable housing targets over short-term proposals, which will almost always come last. And this is what's going to make short-term landlords even more worried. They're worried about death by planning policy, essentially. And this leads me nicely onto our next issue, which is hidden impact 4, which is that selling your property now might get a lot harder. Even if you do get planning permission, this could change your property category. As I said, there's a new category, a code, from C3, normal residential, to C5, short-term, the new short-term let category. So if your property becomes C5, then fewer buyers can purchase it, of course, because their mortgage options shrink and your market value may fall considerably. This has already happened in cities like Amsterdam and Lisbon and Barcelona especially. Also, short-term let landlords can now face fines in councils where they breach those rules. Councils will begin actively scanning Airbnb and Booking.com websites and listings, cross-checking addresses, and then using that information to fine unlicensed hosts, issuing enforcement notices. Some fines, I believe, are up to £50,000 depending on the area. And okay, look, with all that done, you now know the law and the foreseeable consequences and hidden impacts for landlords of that law. Well done again for sticking with me. You actually learned something useful here. Of course, it allows us now to answer the big question, doesn't it? The question you've probably been waiting for: who actually wins and who actually loses? And of course, is this the beginning of the end of the short-term let market? Okay, so let's deal with winners versus losers first. What have we learned? The winners are obviously going to be local renters. Obviously, you'll now face less competition. Local councils and neighbours in neighbourhoods having to deal with less noise and less antisocial behaviour. Another obvious winner is hotels, B&Bs, who obviously get now more business and market share access with dwindling competition. The losers, of course, will be hosts that rely mainly on short-term let income, investors using these holiday lets as retirement planning tools, landlords with really highly leveraged mortgages, of course, or people who've just bought second homes purely with the intent to short-term let them. But I think the biggest loser losers will of course be short-term let hosts in oversaturated tourist towns. This is where the regulation will hit first and will hit hardest, and it's already doing that now. So let's answer the big question, is this the end or the beginning of the end of the short-term let market? Well, here is the honest answer, no. In short, no, and I'll explain why, but this is probably going to be the end of the easy money Airbnb era where anybody can just, at any point, convert their property into a short-term let and capitalise on the massive new rental potential there. Now, we're probably going to see the end of that with stricter new council rules and licensing and planning permission, etc. Because short-term lets are not being banned. They're not, guys, but they're being controlled and capped and taxed and regulated harder than ever before, especially in some councils, but not all of them. Think of it like this. 2010 to 2020 was the gold rush, and 2025 onwards is the crackdown. The landscape is starting to shift, and that legal burden is moving back onto landlords, not onto aggrieved neighbours and renters or communities anymore. If you're a host, this doesn't mean immediately panic, but it does mean that you will need to get compliant with your local council rules, review your tax position, check your mortgage conditions, and remember to regularly audit your safety standards. One complaint now can mean the end if it means to the council's revoking your planning or license. Of course, prepare for any licensing issues, and of course, some of you might need to consider converting to long-term lets if needed. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Most importantly, I want to hear from you on this topic. Let's get a discussion going down in the comments. Are you in favour of this new crackdown? Do you think short-term lets are destroying local communities, or are they a lifeline for homeowners just trying to survive in this difficult world? Does this punish good Airbnb landlords who don't cause issues, who bring in tourism and help the economy? And as always, if you've taken any value from this video, feel free to like and subscribe if you want to learn something useful every week on YouTube about the legal system that you are subject to in this country. That said, I'll see you in the next one.